Welcome, you
And
guys.
Dave, I might have you talk a little bit about your recovery. Um,
Mm.
both you and I have recovered from injuries, and I think that might be of interest to Dr. Andre. I was telling him about the telomere support and a little bit about the muscle stuff. So I
Yeah,
think that's his primary
let's,
interest.
okay, perfect. Let's start off on Monday. We totally like to cater to our guest. So let's jump into the telomere, then we'll go into the foundation, you are what you eat, and how isogenics addresses that. But I would say the telomere breakthrough that isogenics was a part of is probably the greatest thing to happen for the landscape of human health. And I say that with no exaggeration. Um, And Reed, I know that you're familiar with isogenics, so I don't know if there's anything specific that you wanted to hear about tonight. If so, if not, then we'll just go ahead and move forward. I'm going to mute this out just so we don't get any accidental background noise. And then we have the chat as well. You can put things into the chat. And then after I do the telomere presentation, I'll unmute it and just check in with you guys, and then we'll go over the how we're supporting the body with the micro and macronutrients that are missing from our foods and our supplements as well. Let's see here. Okay, so I'll jump around a little bit with the slides. I'm going to share my screen, so you should see my PowerPoint at this point. Um, and a picture, my before picture, August. It says my personal experience. That's what should be on your screen right now. If it's not, then if you're on a phone, you might swipe the screen and it will take you to the screen sharing. So that was me in 2005, 36 years old, and really, really struggling in every area of my life. I was as far away from my goals and dreams as I could possibly be. I always had a problem with chronic fatigue, even as a teenager. I did well in sports growing up and through high school, but it was, pure willpower at times, and the fatigue was just, it was a battle. My mom even took me to the doctors for it, for being tired all the time and sleeping all the time. And they didn't find anything wrong. They just said I'm growing. They did tests and whatnot. And that got worse as I got older. And it was, it's like a chronic fatigue. It's borderline, depression when it hits. And I was going for, trying to get back to being healthy again, like I was used to. That physically, that's as far away from me as I'd ever been. And I was working out. I was riding my bike every day to work. That was 100 miles every 5 days. I was putting on the bike in the middle of the summer in the desert where it's 110, 115 degrees in August. It's the hottest time of year here in St. George, Utah. And I was running stadiums. I was eating super healthy. I was juicing. I bought a juicer. I thought I'm really going to go for it this time, and bought a juicer, supplementing, doing wheatgrass shots, and it still wasn't working. I was trying to lose the weight. I just learned to live with the fatigue. I wasn't expecting that to go away, but I wanted to lose the weight, and it wasn't coming off. I released like 5 pounds, and then I hit a plateau, and I was still extremely heavy, obese. So this is when I was about ready to quit, because after a while, willpower only lasts so long when you're not getting results. And it was about 2.5 months. And I'm like, I'm going to quit. And my wife found isogenics. And the gentleman that got me started, his name's Carl Lavar. He lived about an hour north, Cedar City, Utah. And my wife won the products in a drawing. She tried to get me to buy them. She's like, come listen to these guys, what they told me. I think it's like the answer you're looking for. Because we both knew I was in bad shape and I was always trying stuff. But it wasn't the right moment for me to be open and listening. And all I heard was Charlie Brown's school teacher. So I took the guy's card and I said, I'll try it. I'll give you a call if I want to try it. And I threw his card away. My wife entered a drawing and she won the products in a drawing. That's how I got on isogenics. It was an answer to prayer. And this was me 25 days later with no exercise. It was purely the products that balanced my body out, and something happened that I had never experienced before. That fatigue went away. And to be honest, after about 6 days, I recognized it, and I was afraid that that was going to go away. There's no way that that could last. And here we are 20 years later. And it's been an incredible journey. I've done a lot. I've accomplished a lot of things that, I couldn't even have dreamed of when I started this journey. And it's just been a very fulfilling, purpose-driven life because of Isogenics. Now, again, this was without exercising. The guy that got me started said, I don't want you to think all of a sudden your exercising's kicking in and you're exercising, in an unusual fashion. I was being extreme. And he said, I know what's about to happen. And I don't tell people this, but I want you to experience for yourself the power of this nutrition. And I did. And I was sold. I was going to be the best customer. I drove an hour both ways because I ran out of the meal replacement shake. And he said, well, we'll just order you more. And I'm like, I can't be without it. You have no idea. This changed my life. And so I drove and got some. I ordered more, but I went to his house in Cedar. So it was a 2-hour round trip just to get more shake. I didn't want to be a couple days without it. After this picture here, so that's 1 month, I started exercising again. I enjoy exercising, and that's 4.5 months. So it pushed me through the plateau I was in right here. It got rid of the fatigue I dealt with my whole life, and I tried everything. And then it took me back to my high school weight when I was wrestling. So yeah, to say it got my attention, totally. And it got a lot of other people's attention as well at work and people at church. And so, of course, they wanted to do what I was doing. I was like a billboard. And these were the 3 products that I used back then in 2005. They only had about 6 or 7 products, but these were the three main pillars. This addresses the lack of micro and macronutrients. A whole food, that's what that is. It's a superfood. It's a complete meal. In our clinical study, human clinical trial, peer-reviewed, they lived on that shake. So we'll get to that when I talk about the shake. This is intermittent nutritional fast. We'll talk about that tonight as well. That's so important. And then this is a nutritionally dense adaptogen, ionic trace minerals, about 100 different exotic herbs and botanicals and things that really support the body, adaptogens. John Anderson, when he created that came out in 2005, just before I got introduced to Isogenics. He said that was his greatest creation when it came out. We'll talk about the telomere support. This came along in 2010, and I was mentored by the geneticist that we partnered up with. His name's Dr. William Andrews. And he identified human telomerase, which gene is producing that. And then his breakthrough discoveries that led to the Nobel Prize in telomere research. And now we have all kinds of products, way more pillars of health, supplemental things that people need for different reasons. So, we've really come a long way since 2005. Even if we didn't go beyond these 3, I would still be talking about this stuff and sharing it with people. The reason I'm sharing it with people is because I love the results that other people get when they start putting these products in their body. It makes a huge difference. So there's our disclaimer. We're not going to make any claims around the products curing anything. But when you give the body what it needs, it turns everything on. The body has the innate ability to heal itself. And it seems like in society, we're doing the exact opposite. We're taking away the nutrients from the supplements and the whole foods, and it's turning things off. And people are developing diseases like never before. In fact, this is the latest statistics from a surgeon, Casey Means. She graduated first in her class at Stanford Medical, was a surgeon for about 7 years. And then she said, I had to put the scalpel down. I couldn't do it anymore. My patients were getting sicker and sicker. And then the other things that they were developing and seeing other specialists for in their areas, they were getting sicker and I didn't know why. And then when she tried to find out why and address those issues, she got reprimanded for that. So she said, I just had to put the scalpel down. But she reported these numbers about a year ago. 74% of adults are obese, 50% of kids, 18% of teens have fatty liver disease found in a late stage alcoholic. These numbers are so high, like 77% of young adults are unfit to serve in the military. So when we're at 77%, 50%, 74%, 3/4 of the population, that's got to be something that's pretty fundamentally wrong, right? And that's the soapbox that I've been on, and many of you, once we started getting the solutions and the answers behind those solutions. And now we didn't jump on Dr. Casey Means' bandwagon. She jumped on ours. And I've been on it for 20 years now with Isogenics. And she says it's because we're eating nutritionally deficient and toxic food, and we live in a toxic environment as well. And that's the bottom line. That's the fundamental issue, and it's not being addressed. You're hearing them talk about now in politics with RFK, red dye, we're going to ban red dye. Red dye needs to be banned, but that's like such an infinitesimally small part of the problem when it comes to the preservatives, the chemicals, and whatnot. So this is a study that I had learned when I'd got into isogenics from a gentleman that actually lectured at Harvard about the state of the soil and the farming soil. And he said in 2007, it takes 51 bowls of spinach to get the same amount of nutrition that used to be in one bowl of spinach in 1953. And so, to eat 51 bowls of spinach, and that was every 5 days, almost a week, you would need to eat 51 bowls of spinach in 2007. And you just can't do that. And it's not just spinach, it's minerals across the board. And this is from the US Department of Agriculture over here on the left. And it's showing the decline of those minerals and obviously the rise of disease as a result. When the body's not getting the essential nutrients, it's going to break down. The nutrients are going to fuel the body, and they can also defend and repair. So if you can't get the nutrients to fuel the body to defend and repair and operate, what's the alternative? To break down and degenerate. And that's, diseases are on the rise. And you see this guy it's insatiable appetite. We're not getting the nutrients, so we're always hungry, but people are getting sicker and sicker. Whereas there's no shortage of food-like stuff, but the macro and micronutrients are missing. And unfortunately, it's not just from the soils, it's from our supplements as well. So disease is on the rise. All right, so that's just kind of like the foundation of, hey, there's a problem. And it's not a made up problem. The Geider Institute and Food Matters talks about it. They said you can't get the nutrition you need from the grocery store anymore. It's impossible. It's not, you just need to make wiser choices in the grocery store. No, you can't get it from the grocery store. And we have a clinical study now that shows that isogenics is outperforming whole food by a large margin, not even a close race. So we'll get into that. All right, so let's go into the telomere support. Like I said, I'm going to jump around a little bit here. All right, so I was mentored by Bill Andrews. He partnered up with our company thanks to an associate that's a friend of mine, Peter Greenlaw, and he made the introduction of Bill Andrews to our founder and formulator, John Anderson. And long story short, we were able to get him past a stalemate that he was in his laboratory in inducing telomerase in humans. So I had never heard of a telomere. It's the cap on the ends of the chromosomes. It holds the DNA, the nucleic bonds together, and it's on all four ends. So he would talk about a shoestring, and he'd say the plastic tip on the shoestring that holds the shoestring together, that's essentially what a telomere does for your chromosomes and your DNA. So I made a rope because I'm out lecturing, and I started lecturing about this stuff that Bill was teaching me. And so I made a big rope, and I used red electrical tape. So this would be a perfect chromosome with all the DNA intact. But what happens is the telomere is degenerating through normal biological processes like cell division. Due to gross lack of proper nutrition, the telomere is degenerating just through cell division and the stress there. It shouldn't be, all right? But now we're accelerating the telomere shortening. And so we're seeing now in kids significantly shorter telomeres than they used to have, a couple decades ago. That was actually reported on USA Today, front page news on USA Today in April 2012. And it said that kids' telomeres are significantly shorter than they used to be. But as the telomere continues to degenerate, Bill would say it's like the shoestring frays. Well, the DNA is literally fraying. And typically that happens, the longer we're alive, the shorter the telomere gets. And then there's other factors that will cause it to shorten faster. But then, when somebody's 80, 90 years old, their telomeres are pretty short and they look old and decrepit, right? And in most cases. Now, there's some unique variables with that. And that is some people look younger for their age. Well, why would that be? Well, because their telomeres are longer than the people, their peers that are their age. They've been living a lifestyle that's actually protected the telomere. And instead of accelerating the telomere shortening, they slowed it down. Antioxidants will do that. Low levels of stress will slow down the telomere. Whether you know it or not, we know that those are good things to do, and some people do them. And staying away from, preservatives and chemicals and things like that. Now, something else that the things that will accelerate telomeres, stress. If you have high levels of stress maintained, it actually damages the telomere faster. Now, Bill Andrews proved in human cells that the additives in our processed food, preservatives, those are chemicals, trans fats, those are chemicals, they actually shorten your telomeres faster. And I believe that that's why the kids have shorter telomeres today than they used to, is because they're eating mostly processed food. And now it's ultra processed food, right? Like flaming hot Cheetos. Addictive drugs and substances like cigarettes. Bill Andrews proved that chemicals in cigarettes that they add to them to make them highly addictive is shortening the telomere faster. He proved it in human cells. So that's why somebody who smokes every day is going to have COPD, lung cancer, or emphysema, because they're shortening those telomeres faster in that area. And when you're losing your DNA, you're going to have malfunctions. Well, those malfunctions are given names by the medical community: emphysema, COPD, thyroid disease, kidney disease, liver disease, osteoporosis. Those are only names that are really kind of attached to symptoms. It doesn't tell you why it happened. This is why it happened. That's Nobel Prize winning research. Every degenerative disease is linked to the telomere shortening. So kids today have osteoporosis before they're even teenagers. Babies are being born with diabetes, type 2 diabetes, before they're even out of the womb. Well, how's that happen? The chemicals get passed on to the baby through the mother, through the umbilical cord, and shorten the telomeres faster. And then the gross lack of nutritional support. If the mother's eating all processed food, how's that going to support the baby on a telomere level and all the other levels? And then industrial chemicals, that's why they outlawed asbestos. Not because asbestos kills you, it's because asbestos shortens your telomeres faster. And then you end up with those problems, and it shortens them so fast that they made the link. And they say, well, this is dangerous, right? Just like they did with cigarettes, but they didn't outlaw them, right? All right, so that's all part of the Nobel Prize winning research. And there's a lot more stuff there as well. When the telomere reaches a certain length, it's called senescence, meaning death of the cell. So if you had senescence in one of your main blood vessels, an artery, you'd be dead, because the cell wall wouldn't even be able to hold its structure together. The telomere broke down and the malfunction's so bad that you have an aneurysm. It was the telomere that caused that. The malfunction is the cell wall, right? Alzheimer's is linked to that, macular degeneration, hearing loss. It's all telomere related. So Professor Leonard Hayflick discovered that it was at a certain level, 5,000 bases. You're at 100,000 bases right here. When it reaches 5,000 bases, you'll reach senescence. The cell can no longer communicate. And we're seeing people get there at younger and younger ages now. The lifespan has shortened and whatnot. All right, so there's the problem. Now, so in our youth, typically, the reason we have more vitality and we can jump around and do all these things physically is because our telomeres are longer. And then midlife, we're seeing some symptoms of aging. As we get older, we're getting closer to that senescence. The big issue now is that kids are getting accelerated diseases because we're shortening the telomere faster while they're younger. And that's not a good thing. It's not a good thing for anybody, but this is why. And that's why some people will look older for their age and some people will look younger for their age, depending on their lifestyle and how they're supporting or not supporting their telomeres. All right, this is from an ABC News clip. I'm going to show a different piece of this ABC News clip, but it's just going to mention what I kind of just said there.
Scientists now say by looking at our blood cells and measuring those telomeres, you can get a better idea of how well you'll age. The longer the telomere, the better the chances for a more graceful aging.
Okay, so the longer the telomere, the more vitality and health and youthful, activities and even looking you'll be. Now, Bill Andrews believed that this could reverse. Now, it can't reverse death, senescence, but if there's still life in that chromosome before it reaches senescence, Bill believed it could reverse it and get it all the way back to here. That was in theory, based on the study and committing his life to figuring this out. He said, I'm going to cure aging. I'm going to cure aging or die trying. And he actually wrote a book called Curing Aging. And he identified human telomerase in 1994, the gene that actually produces that enzyme. And he believed, so here's our damaged DNA, he believed if I could activate that gene to produce more of the enzyme, it would repair the DNA. That was a theory. In 1997, he proved his theory right. He identified the gene, started playing with it in the lab, him and his team, and they were able to activate and induce more of that enzyme. And the chromosomes started reversing the damage to the telomere and DNA right in front of their eyes. They did that with human skin cells, cultured. They're still alive to this day. They are like reproductive cells, which are immortal cells. They never shorten their telomeres, the reproductive cells. Now they have skin cells doing that. Skin cells never reach, he has skin cells in his lab that never reach senescence. They're immortal, like the reproductive cells. So he did it. He proved it. Well, he said if we could do that in this guy, we would reverse the effects of his aging and disease. And we were able to partner up with Bill and come up with a product that was safe for humans to consume to activate that enzyme. He tried over about 14 years, tested over 300,000 compounds, and he could only find chemicals. He couldn't find anything that was natural that would work. We helped him pass that. And I got to not participate, but watch and be a spectator up close with that process. And it was incredible. And to say they were excited is an understatement. So here's the ABC News clip talking about telomeres and before we released our product. This was about 2009.
And now, eternal youth. Is it in a cage around the corner? News tonight of a breakthrough for some pioneering mice. But we always wonder, what does a fountain of youth for rodents reveal for humans? Here's Sharon Alfonsi reporting.
I feel tremendous.
In the movie Cocoon, it's a swimming pool that turns back the clock for a group of senior citizens. But now researchers have found a way not just to stop, but reverse the aging process. The key is something called a telomere. We all have them. They're the tips or caps of your chromosome, seen here in yellow. This is what it looks like in a young adult. But as you grow older, the telomeres become damaged and frayed, and as they stop working, we start aging, experiencing things like hearing and memory loss. Scientists took mice who were prematurely aged, added an enzyme, and essentially turned their telomeres back on. You can see it before the enzyme, after.
Their brain function improved, their fertility was restored. It was a remarkable reversal of the aging process.
Look at this picture. The mouse on the right has bad skin, gray hair, and is balding. But the one on the left had its telomeres flipped back on. Even more dramatic, the change in brain size. This is before. The mice had 75% of a normal brain, like a patient with severe Alzheimer's. But after the telomeres were reactivated, the brain returns to normal size.
Okay, so before I'm going to let this play on, and it's going to go into Dr. Watine and talk about our product and what it's doing for patients in his office as a board certified internal medicine doctor. But before I do that, I just want to say with these mice, I read the papers that were published on them, and they had diabetes, they had osteoporosis, they had Alzheimer's, like they said there, cardiovascular disease, liver disease or kidney disease, I think it mentioned. All of those things went away when they activated the enzyme in the mice. They didn't have them anymore. So they had the issues when the telomeres were short, but then they activated that enzyme like Bill did. Harvard did it in mice, and everything reversed in a living mammal. So we're not talking about human skin cells in vitro anymore. We're talking about living, breathing mammals, mice, and everything was reversed, just like Bill had theorized it would be. shortly after that, the Nobel Prize was given to that research. Now we're going to go into a doctor's office in Florida who started giving his patients the product that we had created, that Bill was in a stalemate with. And we've renamed it several times. They're going to call it Product B. That was the kind of launching name, but still the same thing that we have today.
Imagine if all you had to do was take 2 pills twice a day to stay younger longer. Bet we got your attention now.
Scientists working with a company called Isogenics say that they have promising results. Mike Holfeld looked into a latest version of the Fountain of Youth.
To be clear, it's a supplement, not a prescription drug. People that take it say they feel better and younger. Now, the medical community is starting to take notice.
Popular science calls Dr. William Andrews the man who would stop time. The PhD in genetics work is based on the 2009 Nobel Prize-winning discovery of telomeres, the DNA on the tips of chromosomes that actually holds the key to why we get old.
You felt the symptoms of aging?
Absolutely. I was 40 and I felt like I was 50. Now I'm 45 and I feel like I'm 30. My physiology has changed 100%. It even shows up in my blood work. I had sluggish thyroid. I don't have those issues anymore.
But is this supplement a lot of hype or real science?
Their disease processes have gotten better by objective data that I use to assess a patient.
Dr. Robert Watine, a board-certified specialist in internal medicine, has documented more than 400 cases of patient recovery from hypertension, diabetes, kidney disease, even cardio issues.
Only changed one variable, and that's given them this.
Remember the telomeres? Scientists discovered they protect our chromosomes. Each time our cells divide, a small portion of those telomeres shorten.
When the telomere reaches a certain length, the cell dies. That's cell biology.
But the Nobel Prize-winning research found the key to that cell biology, telomerase, an enzyme that essentially lengthens telomeres, keeps them alive longer. Dr. Andrews and his research team says Product B activates that enzyme in all of our cells.
All right, so there it is, right? So we had the ABC News clip, and now we're showing, hey, here's what's happening for humans now. And Bill Andrews said, this is the greatest breakthrough in the landscape of human health. We're going to see things that we've never seen before. And so I've been on this, along with a lot of you, on this mission to share this information with people and help them to know what's available now. Paul Zane Pilzer, a Nobel Prize winning economist, said that he was relating it to the economy and where it's going to be really taking off in the future. And he was talking about wellness. He said, there's a great opportunity in the wellness industry sharing with people things that they don't know exist or that are now affordable. Those two things. And both of these, this fits in both of those categories, that something like this is affordable to the average person and that it exists. So when I was doing a meeting at a dentist office because of something that he saw happening to his patients with their teeth and gums, he wanted to know what the heck she was on because he had been her patient for like 20 years and he had never seen anything like that in 30 years of being a dentist. So I went out and did the presentation, and Amy Sauter was there, and this is her father-in-law, Dick Sauter, and she got him on the products after coming to my presentation. And he's 83 here, and I've worked with these guys. I've gone out to Minnesota and done meetings with them, and I've talked with Dick many times. He's been to our celebrations. And he said, I was going to check myself into a nursing home. I was getting to the point where I knew I couldn't take care of myself. And so here he is at 83, 84, and here he is at 92 years old. And it was an incredible miracle of the human body and being able to do things like Bill Andrews said that we've never seen before. Amy would send me pictures and talk about Dick and say, he's on the roof fixing things. And she took this picture of this really high roof that was really steep. And he's up there fixing something on the roof. And she said he's out there digging ditches and hauling, I think it was almonds or walnuts or whatever it was they grow, 5-gallon buckets in each hand full of nuts and just doing all kinds of things. And they're just so grateful that, the products have done what they've done for him. They said absolutely he would not be around today. So here he is at 83, 92. What is that? Almost 10 years, 10 years of extra quality of life. Bill Foster, Malcolm, you shared with Yolanda, Bill's wife, didn't know if Bill was still around, and barely. They thought he might die on this hunting trip, literally, but they thought, well, at least he'll die doing something that he enjoys doing. And you ended up sharing the products, and at first he refused, but Yolanda started taking them, and she got results that Bill could see, because he said, look, I'm not going to take any more stuff. I think you get your hopes up, and then you start, getting crushed, and you only can take that for, so long. And so when the right thing came along, he said, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm sick of basically your pills, lotions, and potions that don't work. So she started taking them, and he started to see her transformation. So he said, all right, I'll take them. This is him 6 months later. 6 months. He gained about, almost 50 pounds of lean muscle. He was doing the shakes and the telomere support, and then he started taking more of the products that Isagenix offers and working out. And he says, I have a goal. I want to bench press. I want to break the world record for somebody over 70 years old. I think he's 74 now, and he's bench pressing 315 pounds. 315. I don't know what the world record is. I texted him a couple months ago, and we were texting back and forth. I didn't ask him that, though. I need to find out if he's accomplished that and what the world record is. Somebody was on the Zoom that's in Isagenix on Saturday, and they said, yeah, I saw him on the TV or something. There was a big expo that was some big show, and they saw him in the background. They said he looks fit. He looks like you can tell. And so I need to check back in with him. This is Minnie, and this is in Minnesota as well. Minnesota. This is at their farm home. And she was so hunched over, it forced her chin into her chest. She couldn't lift it up. She was like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And this is her 5 months later. So what we're seeing here is a malfunction. She's laying flat on her stomach here, so you could see the hump in her back. And her daughter was just giving her a real light massage before we were going to do a meeting there at the farmhouse. And so anyways, that's 5 months later. And what we're seeing is the intelligence coming back to the bone cell, the cells in the bones. Bones are not wood, inanimate object. They're living, organisms. But when they lose information, they malfunction. Well, this is one of the malfunctions that we're seeing. Well, why is the malfunction not there anymore? Because the information was restored. So those cells are just course correcting. And this has happened multiple times. And what they say is, it's kind of painful some days. Some weeks I'll just have I know my back is moving and adjusting. How wild is that, right? But they know, and so they just keep taking the product, and look, it's straightening it out. Incredible. It's a miracle of the human body. But we're supporting that miracle in a way that we never have before. This one was a cardiovascular issue, and the whole boxing community knew about it because Bob was in the Boxing Hall of Fame, and he was sent home in critical condition, and they were all expecting to go to a funeral. Instead, he went back to work, and there he is 6 months later. They're all freaking out, wondering what in the world he did. And he talks all about the product and everything that it did for him and how it helped improve his cardiovascular system in a way that's unprecedented, never happened before. And that's 1 year later. He bought a Corvette and got a ticket going 120 miles an hour. So you talk about quality of life and enjoying life and that youthful, vitality and vigor. And I mean, getting a ticket going 120 miles an hour, that's pretty cool. All right, so there's the telomere, a quick Reader's Digest version. Let me just check in with you guys. And Malcolm, it looks like something happened to Dr. Andre. Let's see, I'm going to make this so you guys can unmute. Anybody have any questions, any comments on that? And Reed, I know you're at the restaurant, so you're probably not an area where you can.
I looked that up. It's 335 pounds to 420 pounds.
420 pounds is the world record?
I think so.
Oh, cool.
There's two back-to-back years. One guy did it 335, and then next year it was broken by a guy did it 420 pounds at 70.
Did it say the guy's name at 420?
Yeah, I can look it up here.
What if it said Bill Foster, you guys? That would be so cool.
No, no.
That's not Bill Foster.
Um,
That's a lot.
Phil, Philip Henbrook did 335 pounds this year, but last year Rudy Cadleb did 420 pounds, and the first guy was 71 and the second guy was 70. So I just
Okay.
looked for over 70.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'll text Bill that now that I know that, and I would say, hey, I heard what the world record is for bench pressing over 70. Where are you at? And it's been a couple of years since I've heard where he was at, and that was 316 pounds. I rounded it down to 315, but he was at 316 pounds. Um, Either way, that's still great, right? I think he was 72 probably when he did that, which would have been real close to the guy that had the original record, right? 330 something pounds. Cool. All right. Thanks for sharing that. All right. I'll go into a quick bit on the shake. Well, I really like the way the slides turned out on the cleansing. I updated them. But let's just real quick go through the shake. So we'll just start from the clinical study. Read, and this is a clinical study that was more recently put in the spotlight from Dr. Paul Arciero. He was probably around when you were in. I think you said 2019 you went to Celebration. I think this study was done around 2015, maybe a little later. But it was just published in Nature Communications, which is one of the hardest publications to get into. And he's so proud of that and everything that means and everything that means to the medical community as well. There's been some doctors who have now seriously, looked into isogenics because of it being published. And Dr. Paul, another thing too, like we have these little clues, right? Like success leaves clues. He's now the #1 percentage in the world of cited researchers. Dr. Paul Arciero is. He's in the 1%. There's a company that, follows and tracks that stuff, and they sent him a message, and then he relayed that on to us, and then also on social media. So he's in the 1 percentile of cited researchers. And this study was a big one for him because the body performed in ways that they had never seen before. And it really lent towards what he believes about protein. And he's now our chief science officer. Recently, he became the CSO and partnered up with Isogenics. He says he's on a mission to make the difference with his protein pacing with Isogenics because of the results that came out of that clinical study. Now, one of the things that we learned, and this is thanks to Malcolm finding Dr. Lehman, Dr. Paul and Dr. Lehman know each other, and they're both up in that, top brass when it comes to protein and protein synthesis. And this is what we learned from Dr. Don and why our shakes do what they do when it comes to muscle building.
Remember, I said what I was doing with my master's degree. We were studying the age-related changes. What we now know is that as you get older, the efficiency of that protein turnover goes down. So where a 16-year-old, you give them a certain amount of protein, they'll have a very good response. A 65-year-old will have maybe no response at all, or 10% or something. But what we have learned, sort of with the study of leucine and initiation factors and all of that, is that if you give an enriched source of essential amino acids, more protein, you can actually make the adult look just like the 16-year-old. So what we know is that the efficiency goes down, but the capacity to respond doesn't. And so what we're now thinking is that what we now know is that we can get the adult, the 65-year-old, to respond just the same as the 20-year-old as far as muscle protein synthesis.
I remember Dr. Michael Colgan talking about that at one of the events where at 82 years old, he put on 6 pounds of muscle when he started Isogenics. And he's an Olympic athlete trainer, the Colgan Institute. And he said, you know how difficult that is to put that kind of muscle on an 82-year-old? And Isogenics did it like in the first month, 6 pounds of muscle at 82 years old. And the big factor is the leucine is probably one of the biggest factors in the amino acid profile, but also protein that can be assimilated into the body that hasn't been over processed and bastardized through the manufacturing process. But here's Dr. Paul talking about aligning with Isogenics to accomplish what his passion has been.
Two would be we eat too much protein. Nothing is further from the truth. We're on a completely downward trajectory since 1970 in terms of the quantity of protein we eat. I'm on a mission with the protein pacing calculator and algorithms at proteinpacing.org to completely change that. And it's all going to start right here with Isogenics.
So that interview with Dr. Lehman is about 2 hours long on YouTube. And in there, he talks about the leucine and that you need about 3,000 grams per day, along with a minimum in a meal, about 28 grams of protein.
Two would be we eat too much protein. Nothing is further.
So here we have 3,500 milligrams in one serving, and also 36 grams of protein in the performance protein. That's why we see the results that we do, putting muscle on with no exercise in the clinical study. That was the big factor. And he said to get that in the interview with Dr. Lehman, to get that kind of leucine, I'm going to say based on the way he talked about it in the interview is pretty much impossible. It's pretty much impossible. If you're on a plant-based diet, strictly impossible. Even when you're eating meat, it's going to be hard because where are you sourcing the meat from? How was it raised? How was it fed? And then, you're cooking it and heating it up to high temperatures and things like that. And how much you would have to consume in order to get the 3,000 milligrams. That's not saying the 30 grams of protein. He's saying that's different. That's going to be different from, it's not eat 30 grams of meat protein and you're going to get the 3,000. There's no correlation there. So to get that leucine is the initiation factor that makes the 70-year-old put on muscle like a 16-year-old. The assimilation and the efficiency goes down, but the capacity to do it doesn't. What makes up the difference? Well, the protein and the quality of it, but the leucine is probably both are big factors. But again, if you're getting good protein, like from a meat source, let's say it's grass-fed, and they raised it, the farmer that did it right there in your town, doesn't mean you're getting that level of the leucine in that meat, okay? So Isogenics has taken the very profound, and we've said this way before understanding this, and made it really simple and, something that could be done on a daily basis. So I'm taking 2 shakes a day. So, no wonder I maintain my muscle with very little working out. I'm sporadic in my workout and I do different types of things, and I haven't resistance trained in a long time, but my muscles are like they've always been. They haven't gone down. So pretty awesome and pretty great information as well, because that's a principle. And, if we can know that and name it and define it, now we have, and then give the source of how we could accomplish that. That's a game changer for people, because muscle is a big deal as you get older. That's linked to a lot of different degenerative issues as well, and quality of life is losing our muscle. And then here we have the picture of Bill doing it, right? That's 8 months right here, these bottom 2 pictures. He texted me those. This was 6 months from that picture to that picture, and that's 8 months. And then I made this video just as a quick, reiterate.
What we now know is if you give an enriched source of protein with the right amount of essential amino acids, specifically leucine, a 70-year-old will experience protein synthesis exactly like a 16-year-old.
Okay, and there we have the picture and the science behind it. All right, I'll finish up with this real quick, the cleansing. We know the importance of supporting the body so it can detox itself and the organs. And we understand that fat is now the protective insulation against toxicity, especially when it gets into the body. We now have a name for it. They're called obesogens. Obesity and toxins are related, where the body will build up fat in order to insulate us from the toxins that are not leaving the body. So cleansing becomes very important. Some people will do a water cleanse. That's not going to do it. Your water has toxins in it. It doesn't have the botanicals that support the organs to get the toxins out. And that's what we need. So a body that's undernourished, especially with very specific, I would say, for lack of a better way of saying it, rare botanicals that are not in our everyday diets, they're not in our grocery store foods at all. Those are what we need in order to support our organs now to get these toxins out. And science has proven that now, that your body, we've said it before science proved it in 2005. We were saying it since 2002, but the toxins will build up in the fat. It's trying to keep them out of your organs because if you've heard of the word carcinogen, that's a chemical that is known to cause cancer. And so your body, being intelligent and smart, is trying to protect you from carcinogens getting into your organs and causing the malfunctions and cancer and other problems. So it just puts them in the fat. Now,
fat cells do more than store calories. They lock away heavy metals, pesticides, food dyes, preservatives, even metabolic waste, keeping these toxins from hitting your heart and other organs.
Okay, so there you go. It's a protective insulation now. The best way, though, is to get them out of the body. Now, the more toxins that build up, the bigger the fat cells get. And that's where obesity starts to come in. We're a very toxic environment. I mean, on average, they find 72 different pesticides in your fruits and vegetables at the grocery store. And then in your water, there was a study, they never found less than 500 to 800 different chemicals in the drinking water, from rocket fuel molecules to pesticides to prescription drug chemicals, heavy metals in the drinking water. And so, we have this problem with the obesity, toxic related obesity. So in a healthy body that's getting the nutrients, thanks to Cleanse for Life, these are just a few of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ones. There's about 100 active ingredients and botanicals in the Cleanse for Life, but you have eleuthero, yellow dock, burdock root. These things attach to heavy metals and chemicals and toxins in the body and pull them out. And then you have antiviral, antifungal, antiparasitic, antivirus botanicals that have been proven through studies. And that's what these are listed from the Food Pharmacy book. It's a big old dictionary. The clinical studies have been done around these. And also the restorative capacity of aloe. All of that is in here. So these toxins your organs are now empowered to get the toxins out through the bowel movements and through the urination process. So when we get rid of the toxins, guess what happens to that insulation of fat? Goes away. That's why we see the incredible weight loss with isogenics as a side benefit of detoxing the body in the way that we do. So we released 4 times more fat in the clinical study, 6-month study with no exercise versus the heart healthy diet, the Mediterranean diet, eating a whole food diet. We released 4 times more fat and 300% more toxins through the urination process. The liver sent those toxins this time, because it's fortified to do it, to the kidneys, and then you urinate them out. And that's what we do on our cleanse days. We're supporting the body with the Cleanse for Life, and then we're drinking lots of water, and we're urinating out those toxins because of these botanicals that are in there to remove those toxins. The botanicals don't remove them, the organs do. We're just giving the organs the nutrients that they need, versus the other way where we're putting toxins in our body with the food we're eating, in the air and the water. So there's different ways to cleanse. You can do 24-hour cleanse. This is what they did in the clinical study. They did 1 cleanse day a week. And over the heart healthy diet, the Mediterranean diet, the group that was on isogenics got to eat more calories, but we still released 4 times more fat, while at the same time putting on 4 times more muscle. There's the leucine and the protein factor, right? The efficiency was restored. The average age in that was 48 years old. One of the gentlemen, 62 years old, had one of the best results. And then you could do a 48-hour cleanse, which is really deep cleansing of getting these toxins out very quickly in a short amount of time, which produces all kinds of great health benefits. So on a cleanse day, you would do 4 ounces 4 times. So that would do 1 day. So this whole bottle would do 2 cleanse days, like you're seeing right here on the 48-hour. or 2 days, 1 day a week per bottle. You also eat these little snacks. They're going to keep your body out of digestive mode, but give you the really important nutrients, your amino acids, your fats, a little bit of protein, a little bit of carbs, but not put your body into digestive mode because you don't eat on a cleanse day. So it's not fasting, it's nutritional supported cleansing, and it's the right kind of nutrition. This is an example. See that visceral fat around the waist and then in the organs? This is an MRI cutaway from the clinical that Dr. Paul did. This is a new precedent. He says you never see this kind of visceral fat loss. That piece is completely gone. That one's almost completely gone. And then look at the waist circumference. He says in a video that it just basically falls off. And but he said no amount of exercise or dieting does that. This is an unprecedented thing that Isagenix has introduced him to. Now, we were all familiar with it because we were using the products before he did this clinical. So in a toxin, insulated body, this is where I was, and I tried diets, and, they're not the best thing to do. Calorie restriction is not the way to lose weight. Besides, the first 3 letters are die in diet, right? So here's the toxins stored away in the fat and in the outer extremities, away from the organs. And we calorie restrict. When we calorie restrict, the body still needs energy, right? So it's going to go to the fat cells and get those energy. And here's a little video talking about that.
Fat isn't just padding. It's a vault of stored calories, little packets of potential energy. When you move, your body cracks open those packets and turns them into fuel that powers every stride.
So if you're not putting the calories in through the mouth, the body still needs the energy. So it's going to go unlock that energy from the fat cells, which actually shrinks it, which releases the toxins that were in that fat cell. It expanded to put them in there. Now you just reduced it, and now you release those toxins throughout the body. And the body knows that, and it goes into defensive mode now. It will override calories in versus energy expending. You won't lose any weight. That's where I was at. So frustrating with all the work and discipline that I was using. I hit a plateau early on, and super frustrating when you're in a plateau. And when you're working out really hard and eating really, really healthy, and it's just not working. So you get to the point where you feel like this guy.
Nope, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. Oh, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I was just about ready to quit my diet because it wasn't working when Isagenix showed up. And, so many people are familiar with the rebound once you start eating the calories again, because the toxins need to get back in the fat. So the body's going to immediately distribute it into fat and tuck those toxins away. Again, called obesogens.
Ever heard of obesogens? It's when your body uses fat to wrap up harmful toxins, like packing peanuts around glass, locking them away inside fat cells. The catch? When that fat burns, the toxins flood out.
When that fat burns, the toxins flood out. Hit the plateau, no more results. Tired and hungry all the time, no results, and you stop the diet, right? Diets do not work. So I was at my plateau when I started, and as a mechanic, totally explains why I could only release 5 pounds and still be obese and not losing any more. In fact, I would gain a little weight just drinking water. Seriously, it was so frustrating. And I didn't cheat. I stayed strict, and I wasn't losing any weight. And this time, though, I didn't diet. I cleansed. And I released 27 pounds in 25 days, 53 pounds in 8 weeks. And here we are 20 years later. And it's an incredible, this right here was a revelation to me. I had experienced it before I had learned this. This is one of the factors why I really felt like I need to share this information with people. People don't know about this. They're not selling this stuff in Walmart. They're not seeing commercials on TV, and nobody's teaching this. And, Isagenix is leading the way. And we're still leading the way. We're still the world's leader in results. You can't get results like these anywhere else. Even though people have tried to mimic us and copy us, they haven't been able to do it. So the benefits of cleansing is I can enjoy the foods that I couldn't eat here in the plateau. You eat one wrong thing and it immediately turns it into fat. You eat something wrong here and it doesn't. In fact, it seems like I'm lighter the next morning because I took in more calories and it like got my metabolism going. How true is that for some of you? Like you're like, whoa, I really overate and I feel really leaner this morning. I feel leaner. So I can enjoy foods that I couldn't eat on a diet. I maintain my weight loss, my mental clarity, my energy's there. And I'm using the shakes, right? I'm doing 2 shakes a day because I enjoy them. I love how they taste and I do what I love. And I love the shakes. I'm free from the effects that those toxins cause. And I maintain healthy cravings. I keep my body alkaline. So this is incredible, what we're able to do for people in that 1-2 punch, just between those 2 products, the shake and the cleanse. Now you add the telomere support on top of that, and we're really doing, I want to say hodgepodge, like this, like potluck of amazing results for people with the 3 products. And you could use any one of those products all by themselves and get a result, amazing result. But you combine all 3 of them, game over. It's done. Changing the landscape of human health. So with that, you guys, thanks for checking in. Anybody have any questions, any comments? I love sharing this information. All right. We're not going to be here Thursday night, and I think you know why, but we'll be back on Saturday morning. Usually Rhonda or Jeff and Debbie are doing it with me, or Bev. But I'm going to do it Saturday morning, and we'll go into all those pillars and a few other things, the collagen, talk a little bit about the creatine that we came out with and the pure clear protein, and try and hit a few more of those pillars of health that are really essential in giving people results that they want to get. So we'll do that Saturday morning, and then we'll be back here again next Monday.
Thanks, Dave. And Dr. Andre, I guess he had a 6 o'clock he had to get off, but he said he's going to pick it up by looking at the recording. Did we record this, by the way?
Yeah, we did. And I will put this, let me stop the recording. We just invite you to get back with the person that got you here, and they'll help you get started on this journey.